All right, folks, baseball season is here, and arm injuries occur all too frequently these days. So what we're going to do here is give you a little education. We're going to have one of the best, Tom Mulvey, owner of Athletex Sports and Orthopedic Physical Therapy. He is going to talk about, the throwing athlete, how to prevent different arm injuries from occurring, specifically pitchers, outfielders, whatever position it takes to throw on the field. And Tom's a good friend of ours, so folks, sit back, relax, and soak some of this in. All right, Tom, let's talk, the throwing athlete and some of the various injuries that occur during the baseball, softball season.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, and it's really an important enough topic to really come back and expand a little bit on. With the shoulder itself, you have some important structures here. You have, this is, if you can picture this, this is the back of the shoulder itself, so you have the posterior portion of the rotator cuff. You have this superior portion of the rotator cuff with the clavicle here, and then in the front you have more of another portion of the rotator cuff. It all comes together to form a rotator cuff capsule here, and so much occurs within this area that problems. The rotator cuff obviously can have little micro tears or tendinitis that can be acute or chronic in nature. You have the joint capsule itself that, because it's inert ligament, that you can have a sprain in that tissue. But you also have other things that happen into the elbow. The area of the elbow, you have your bicep and your tricep. You have a nerve that comes along, the ulnar nerve, that quite often in throwers will become irritable. You also have the median nerve and the pronator muscle that's into the forearm that causes problems that will radiate even down into the hand. And sometimes you'll even have a medial epicondylitis that will occur just by the nature of the amount of gripping that's done by these players.
Yep. In terms of prevention, and I think that's very important, Tom, what are the best ways for athletes to avoid sustaining these injuries?
The most important thing is education, and as the parent even, as well as the athlete, to know what's involved with the specific activity. If you have a thrower, know the phases, because within each phase there are specific things that occur that can cause problem. There's specific things that should be trained, but more importantly, that also helps us to know where the irritation is. So in a thrower, you've got 5 phases. You've got a wind up, you've got a stride and early cocking phase, and then you've got a late cocking phase that goes into acceleration and into deceleration. And the use of the body, use of footwork, all of that comes into play in making that more efficient. And you've been around the game a long time. You'll see some of these kids that throw and they just have the most unorthodox motions. And so that throws a really caveat into what you're trying to do to help correct them. So it's really important that even when they see a specialist, that we have some familiarity with how they appear to go through those movements.
Poor mechanics, poor throwing or pitching mechanics. What are some of the common injuries that occur in the throwing arm?
In the shoulder, a functional impingement, because there is some inherent, believe it or not, weakness that occurs within that shoulder. People just assume that because this kid throws so much that he's strong. They're not strong, and it's more of an endurance problem, that as they fatigue, the entire continuity of this joint changes with position of the shoulder blade, as well as with position of the humeral head. But also the things that will occur in the rotator cuff, which will start off with just inflamed tendons or ligaments that continue to elevate into more chronic problems. You also have bursitis, just a tissue that's a protective tissue within the joint. Dead arm syndrome, which is typically called, only because we really don't know specifically what it is, but it's related to inflammation and fatigue that occurs within the joint. A slap lesion, which is a superior labral anterior-posterior tear. A lot of times it has to be repaired surgically. Elbow pain could be related to the ulnar nerve here, an ulnar neuritis that may give the player some numbness into a couple of fingers here. Medial nerve, the median nerve may give it into the hand a little bit of numbness there, but also medial epicondylitis that may be just some chronic elbow type pain.
Okay. And what can be done to address these problems?
Again, education, parents get involved, know what they're doing, be aware of innings. Remember that even though practice and game innings are counted, count coaching, pitching coach innings, count all these innings and really make sure that you curtail them to allow these kids to develop without pain. And make sure there is some preventative conditioning done to protect that. You know, it's just get involved and get more knowledgeable about the activity.
Yep, and I tell kids too, I mean, they want to be tough, they want to gut it out, and you know, that leads to other problems, other injuries, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And you know, it's great to be macho and stuff, but you're looking at kids' futures as well, you know. So, and there are other kids that it could be a minor injury, and you know they treat it as a major injury, but it's always better to be on the safe side, right, Tom? If you have any type of injury.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, folks. We are going to go to a timeout here. We'll be back in a little bit. Stay tuned.